All right, everybody. I've got my coffee. I got my show notes. I didn't write notes for the first episode, but I did write notes for this episode because there's kind of a lot going on. So let me get a sip of coffee and we will continue onwards. Episode 2, another really good episode like the first one. Obviously playing loose and fast with a couple elements of the lore here, which we'll talk about. But there's a lot I did like. Some stuff I'm still curious about. Overall, much like the first episode, this feels like it's a great improvement over what the first season was offering. So I'm interested to see where they're going with this season. There was one particular scene, it's at the end of the episode, that is what I feel the truest to the book thing that we've gotten from the show since it launched. There have been nods to known lore, but this is the first one when they've come right out and like done something that is exactly as it was described in the appendices and also greater, explained in greater detail in the Silmarillion, which again, they can't touch the Silmarillion, so it doesn't how much your Tolkien love of the Legendarium is raging inside that they didn't do things the way the Silmarillion said they did them. They can't touch that. They don't have the rights to it. So get over it. Let's enjoy the rest of the episode because there's a lot here to enjoy if you can get over that nerd rage. I got over it. Like I went into season 1 with a lot of opinions. Go watch. I did like I don't know 100 videos before the launch of season 1 and critiqued so many elements. But once I relaxed that a little bit and got into the flow of what they were doing, I have a greater appreciation for season 1. Still a lot of flaws. The mithril storyline, I'm never gonna stop complaining about that. And the short-haired elves, no. But I realized that a lot of those things are just my baggage, and I don't want baggage when I watch TV. So let's enjoy season 2 for what it is. Full spoiler alert going forward. I don't do spoiler free, so if you haven't watched the episode yet, I'm running a little bit behind on these because I didn't watch all 3 in one day. So this is a day out from the first episode. Tomorrow we'll do episode 3, and then we'll get into further discussion about the first trilogy of episodes, as well as talking with my wife a little bit about her perspective on things. Because remember, she's never read the books, so it's fun. All right, first up, I really wonder if they are going to go with the old man, bumbling wizard type, the Astari, and this other guy who shows up today with Kieran Hines playing a very Saruman-looking individual who also seems to have some form of power over blood magic or something. And it really makes me wonder if they are going to do something here with the Blue Wizards of Rune, because those are never described ever, other than in a brief section of the Legendarium, and we get. I mean, there's nothing there. It's just like these two guys went down to Rune, right? And I love the fact that Tolkien, in one of the letters, I believe, has a quote. It says, "I think that they went as emissaries to distant regions east and to the south, missionaries to enemy-occupied lands, as it were. What success they had, I don't know, but I fear that they failed as Saruman did, though doubtless in different ways, and I suspect they were founders or beginners of secret cults and magic traditions that outlasted the fall of Sauron." Interesting. So we definitely get like a culty vibe from the blood magic dude. Um, so I need to know more. We did get the reveal that he was the one who sent the blonde-haired, white-robed, crazy witch-type characters after the stranger, who he knows is an Istari. Um, he's the one who sent her out and her team. So it appears to have nefarious reasons for doing what they did, but also they don't seem to be, at least at first glance, they don't appear to be allied with Sauron because they're talking about Sauron amassing his power, but it doesn't mention them being in league with him. And they seem to want to capture this Istari, this person they know is a wizard, before he has his full powers. So very interesting there. And obviously we do have a subplot with the two hobbits and our stranger going through the desert, realizing they're being followed, and ultimately a moment where they find a well in the desert when they really need water. They get over there. There happens to be a shepherd's staff. They get attacked. The stranger picks up the staff and he's like, it's almost as if, and then he starts, he casts a really powerful tornado spell. And at first it appears the staff is helping him to harness his power. And then the staff disintegrates in his hand and he loses control. And the two hobbits go, whoo, flying off into nowhere, which we'll figure out in episode 3. It's kind of the least important plot was them in episode 2. But I do think it's interesting considering what we know or don't know about the Blue Wizards of Rhûn and how maybe these two are somehow part of that. I just don't know. Um, Throwing that out there because I saw those two this morning and I went, ooh, I wonder if that would be an interesting way to tie into existing lore. A big plot point from this episode is there is an earthquake that happens and enshrouds Khazad-dûm in darkness. It destroys the light shafts, which means they can no longer grow food. The stone singers do a song. They can't see anything. The mountains have ceased to speak to them. They lay the blame at the foot of the mountain of doom, which has sprung up way off in the distance. Or at least they mention, I don't know if specifically talking about Mount Doom, but they mention the volcanic eruption, and that has sent tremors up and has caused these earthquakes to happen. So portions of the city are destroyed. Lots of people die. They can't grow crops anymore. The dwarves are basically in a very, very bad spot. Of course, neither one of the son or the king will talk to each other, the prince or the king. And there's a great scene in here that I really got a chuckle out of, where Durin is down in the shafts helping to dig to save his people, and these dwarves basically call him Palace Boy. And they're joking about the fact that he's got blisters. They're like, oh, I had blisters when I was 5 years old. Ha ha ha. Palace Boy been shining his jewels all those years. And then they shove him, So there's definitely some bullying going on in the shafts, which I thought was really cool. I'm going to save the best for last. There are some really powerful scenes throughout this whole episode. They're basically the elves are planning an attack on Mordor because they suspect that Sauron is going to go there and supplant Adar, take over the forces of Mordor, and threaten the whole world. So they are trying to figure out how to attack. They, in the process of this, they end up having a discussion, Gil-galad and Galadriel, about the power of the ring and how they both seem to be having prescient, like they're seeing glimpses of possible futures, and none of those futures look good. Like mountains falling, smoke everywhere, clouds above 2 white towers, very forward thinking, as it were. They are seeing glimpses of the future that will come, and in some cases, futures of possible things. So they're both getting glimpses of those things. The 2 towers reference was amazing. Minas Tirith fallen into ruin, and it's really cool. But they are where Gil-galad is really stressed, and so is Galadriel. And so they are like, we need to send this message to Eregion and warn Celebrimbor. Of course, the message doesn't get there because the orcs kill the messengers, all part of Sauron's plan. But in the process of all of this, Galadriel ends up saying, I need to go to Eregion and make sure that Celebrimbor's okay. Gil-galad says, yes, but you've already been corrupted by him once. You can't go. Like, we will send someone else. And she begs and pleads, and she convinces him. She's like, what if I don't go alone? What if I bring someone with me? And his whole thing is she's already let Sauron in once. And Sauron is known to be able to deceive and pull at the heartstrings. And she knows that, but she's desperate enough that she's willing to risk it. Gil-galad's not willing to risk it. So she decides, well, I can convince him, okay, I'm going to go talk to Elrond and maybe get him to go with me. And there's this beautiful scene between Elrond and Galadriel where Elrond basically calls them all out and says, all of you elves who have donned the rings and are doing this war against Sauron, you've all been deceived. You're all playing his dancing tune to his fiddle. I forget what the phrase is. But you guys have all fallen for it. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm done. But then he goes to consult with Círdan, who has one of the rings. And Círdan shows him the power of the rings and says, if you truly believe that we are being manipulated by Sauron. Quick commercial break, everyone, to celebrate and give thanks to all of these amazing people who keep me on the air full time. Really appreciate the support. All you got to do is join as a member. You get access to private videos. You can also do super thanks on any upload or super chats and stickers on any live stream or premiere you see. And beyond that, don't forget we're multi-streaming over on Twitch now, so you can support over there as well. Thanks so much to everybody. Let's get back to the video at hand. Wouldn't the best course of action be for you to go along with your friend and guide her actions to ensure that these rings and this power is being used for good and not for evil? Which convinces Elrond to go. Now, ultimately, he convinces the king that because Galadriel has already fallen once, she can't be trusted to lead the mission, but she definitely needs to go because she's wielding one of the rings and she has the power. And Gil-galad says, I agree. You're going to lead the mission. And of course, Galadriel is furious about that decision, livid that she's not going to be given command of this. However, my most favorite scene, the best part of this entire episode, was the reveal of Annatar to Celebrimbor as an agent of the Valar, and Celebrimbor falling for it hook, line, and sinker. This is right here. If you've only ever watched television and you've only ever watched film, there are powerful performances that come through on screen. But if you've never been to an award-winning play and theater, this is good stuff. Oh, and by the way, Ben Daniels is killing it as Círdan. The scene with Elrond is great, but this scene stole this episode for me. So this whole plot line is like when Halbrand comes back, right? And Celebrimbor's been told not to treat with him, but he hasn't heard out why. He hasn't heard why he can't treat with Halbrand. And the message that was getting sent to him was because Halbrand is Sauron. Well, that message, of course, never arrives because Sauron's troops take it out, or Adar's troops, somebody's troops take out the message. So he never gets that message. So he refuses Halbrand at first, but Halbrand persists and waits, and in the rain, and in the cold, and wounded, and woe is me, king. Celebrimbor eventually goes down to see him. Sauron worms his way back in, gets inside with a warm bowl of food and a glass of wine, and he listens. And Celebrimbor is just starving for information. Did the rings work? Did the rings work? And he says, yes, they worked. The elves can work wonders. And Celebrimbor's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is when Sauron reveals himself as Annatar to Celebrimbor, and he plays upon this guy's god complex of being the greatest creator since Fëanor, and he's going to be able to outshine Fëanor. He's created rings that can create life. He is the master. He is like God. He's able to create, like, he deserves more. And he appears out of the fire. And the cool thing is Celebrimbor doesn't want to believe it. He's like, you can't be a messenger from the Valar. No, that's impossible. And then the windows burst open from a storm, and he goes to close them. When he turns around, Halbrand's gone, and like the room is completely dark. They're in the forge, right? And the fires die down, and the fires come back. Boom! And here comes this figure out of the flame and the light, and it's Charlie Vickers, but looking a little bit different with a wig and looking more like an elf with long hair and one of the Valar. And if here is one caveat I will say where I'm willing to forgive the use of short-haired wigs on the elves. It does help for the non-initiated to quickly distinguish between like elves and the Valar. Like long flowing hair. Oh, that must be an important elf. One of the Valar, or a very important elf like Gil-galad, Um, food for thought. It is an interesting visual tool. And he comes out of the flame, and basically the whole speech as he's coming out of the flame is talking to Celebrimbor about I'm going to teach you things that will make you become more well known than Feanor ever was. And he's fanning the flames of, of, that ego inside of Celebrimbor. And then he does this thing where he's like, I will make you Lord of the Rings. And there's this epic pan shot where he's like, looks like he's bathed in golden light from heaven, right? Annatar, from the Valar, I have been sent here from Valinor. Like this is just, it's an epic, epic scene. And poor Celebrimbor is just like, and he falls for it. And the whole premise here is that Sauron wants him to make the other rings. And so he uses Annatar to Annatar. It's Annatar. I may pronounce it wrong. I don't care. But his whole thing is he needs Celebrimbor to create the rest of the rings because the three are lost to him. He's not been able to touch them, but he wants 7 for the dwarves and 9 for men, and of course the one for himself. Now, there's a scene earlier in this where Galadriel is having this moment during the war room session where she sees a vision of her. She's talking to um, Celebrimbor, and she gets that prescience, and we get parts of that rhyme, parts of that. The 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, and then she sees Celebrimbor get nailed to this. I forget if it was a tree or something, but he gets like stabbed into a tree, and these vines come out, wrap around him, and things come through his chest, and he just dies there, in the midst of giving this speech in the Black Speech of Mordor. Great visuals in this episode, and like I said, the Annatar scene for me, um, I'm gonna give all hats off to them for this. Yes, I will critique the absolute shit out of you guys, showrunners, um, when you're playing fast and loose with the lore. By the way, one of the areas where they're playing fast and loose here is definitely, it's not quite mithril level, but it's getting there, which is, and that's why I'm calling out right now, so people don't think that you're just giving him, I can't believe you fell for it, you become brainwashed. Um, the idea that Adar killed Sauron when Morgoth fell, I'm not really. That's them playing way fast and loose because Adar's in control of the armies of Mordor, not Sauron. They're playing fast and loose with the lore here. There are elements of could have happened. Let's make it happen. But giving credit where credit is due, what they did with Annatar here is really well done. I'm enjoying it. I can't wait to see episode 3. Having a lot of fun with this. As I said earlier, don't forget I will be covering every single episode individually, and then as my wife watches them, we'll be giving her perspective on them, and then we're going to having some additional discussions about things, such as Sauron is really, it's at the forefront this season, and it's really well done. Can't wait to see more. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Check the playlist below for more Rings of Power from me, and of course, daily streams here and on Twitch. I'll see everybody in the next one. Hopefully, we'll see you on the socials and in Discord as well. Don't forget the Patreon.